Hey guys, first I want to say thank you again so much for all the support everyone's been giving me on my new channel. We just hit 3,000 subscribers today and it happened very fast. This channel isn't even 3 months old. I'm not complaining, of course. It would be pretty amazing if I could hit 10k subs though. Let's see if we can go there. I kind of wanted to try something else instead of a gift card giveaway because I feel like it's too lazy of a special to make for my subscriber milestones. That and I did those on my old channel, so I want to try something new. I mulled over it a bit, and I forgot I still had cooking videos I want to do. So for every 1,000 subscribers I get on the channel, up to 10k, I'm going to be making a cooking video. While you guys aren't getting any prizes or gifts, I wanted to do something a little bit more from the heart. And I know you guys wanted to see cooking videos for a while, so I'll be killing 2 birds with 1 stone. Right now I'm at the supermarket collecting stuff. I'm actually not even here for ingredients other than ground beef and spices because I already have everything at home, but if I'm going for a supply run, I figured why not record it. The dish we're making for this video is my favorite one. It's my signature dish curry rice, or how we Asians like to pronounce it, kare, but I'll say curry to make it less confusing. Asian curry is unlike Indian curry because Indian curry tends to be the dish itself, whereas Korean/Japanese golden curry is a sauce that you usually would have next to rice. Super delicious, it's wholesome, it's filling, and it's a great meal to have with your friends. While I was in college, I would usually cook this meal for any new friends I made because the quickest way to the heart is to the stomach. Curry is relatively cheap to make and it doesn't require much. All you really need are potatoes, vegetables, a protein of some kind, usually ground beef or pork, and the curry blocks. But like instant ramen, where you need very little to enjoy the basic dish, what makes ramen so good is what new things you can add, and curry is the same way. I don't really add any new raw ingredients, I prefer just adding spices and seasoning instead, but I might try to mix it up in the future if I get better at cooking and I might re-record. In terms of ingredients, I'll have the full list of what I used and what I recommend in the description below, but here's what you need at base. You obviously need curry, blocks or powder, entirely up to you. Powder is a bit healthier because there's less fat, but doesn't give that same viscous, saucy consistency in curry. It turns into more like a soup. I recommend S&B Golden Curry. They have different spice levels for people's tolerances, but I'm Asian, so naturally I pick hot. Next thing you need are potatoes. I recommend standard Idaho Russet Potatoes, the same stuff you would use for baked potatoes, though you're welcome to use red potatoes or whatever potatoes you feel like using. Get some ground beef or pork. If you're a vegetarian, feel free to skip this ingredient. When going for meat, try to go for a very high lean to fat ratio, like 90:10 or even 93:7. I'll explain more about that later. Onions are also good because they add some pungency to your dish along with the natural spice of curry. Red, yellow, brown, white, green onions, it doesn't matter. Then lastly, mixed vegetables. You can either choose to prep the vegetables yourself, like get carrots, peas, corn, etc. But if you feel lazy, like me, frozen mixed vegetables, they never do you wrong. And there's a lot of spices you can use. I like to use general seasonings such as garlic, sea salt, pepper, chopped onions, what have you. It's all based on your experimentation, and let me know if you guys come up with anything good. Now let's get into the actual prep work. First, you want to make sure you have rice cooking. That should be the starting step because rice takes a while to cook depending on whether you use a pressure cooker or a rice cooker, or if you want to use the instant rice, it takes only 1.5 minutes. It would usually take about 30 to 45 minutes conventionally. While that's cooking, start peeling the potatoes and cutting them up. You want to chop them into bite-sized pieces, but not too small. They shouldn't be diced, but about the size of a piece of chocolate from a chocolate bar. As for how many potatoes I put in, I gauge it based on how much meat I add to the dish, and I prefer more protein, so I go for a 60 to 40 meat to potato ratio. But curry, it's a very forgiving dish, so you can afford to eyeball it. Usually 2 or 3 potatoes work depending on the size of them and how much curry you want to make. I didn't include it in this video, but if you plan to add regular onions, you should dice them up so that they're about the same size of, let's say, what you would put in fried rice. If you don't feel like putting in raw onions, you can use what I used in this video, which is Lipton onion soup mix, or whatever onion soup mix you want to add. It's close enough. Immerse the potatoes in a bowl of water to keep them fresh and get started on the actual cooking. You want to add a thin layer of water in the pot so the meat doesn't stick to the side and burn. You could use oil, but usually the fat that in the meat is enough to cook with. The reason why I recommend a high lean to fat ratio for the meat is because you want to crush up the meat and ground it. Usually when grilling meat like burgers, you want a little more fat so the meat sticks together and doesn't break apart, but for curry it's the opposite. Crush up the meat as much as you can so that there aren't any big chunks, and then start adding your seasoning. I always add some taco powder because I like the flavor of taco powder and it doesn't clash with the curry flavor. I think it might actually help it. Then I will put in onions or onion soup mix, whichever you prefer, and start mixing the seasoning. I also add in some all-purpose seasoning, which is usually garlic, sea salt, pepper, and onion for a bit more flavor. Keep mixing up the meat until it's medium well or well done. Depending on your lean to fat ratio, you may or may not want to drain the fat before continuing forward because the fat will end up sitting on top of the water and creating a very icky layer of gunk, but there is another way to deal with that, which I'll talk about later. Flush out the potatoes and put them into the pot. Add fresh water up to about, I'd say, 75% of the pot and stir the ingredients until nicely mixed. Then turn the heat up high if it isn't already, place the lid on the pot and wait for it to reach a hard boil. Every minute or two I take the lid off to see how things are going, and I stir the pot to keep the ingredients from burning at the bottom. By now you'll notice the layer of gunk sitting on top, which is a mix of fat and protein, but mostly fat. You don't need to skim it if you don't want to, but I prefer to do so just for good conscience because I don't like seeing it. I usually put more seasoning in since you take a lot out from skimming, and then I remix and put the lid on again. You want the water to boil enough to the point where even if you turn the heat to low, it still keeps boiling. After that, start adding in the mixed vegetables. Since I assume you're using frozen veggies, once you put them into the pot, you want to stir them around and wait for the water to boil again before adding the final ingredient. If using curry blocks, I recommend breaking them apart before putting them in so it melts a lot faster. How many to add depends on how salty you want the curry to be. I personally like to make my curry somewhat watery because if the curry gets too thick, it can cause it burning at the bottom. And when it cools off, it dries up, which doesn't taste too good. Mix thoroughly until you're 100% sure the curry blocks melted. You can do a few tastes if you think it's too light or too salty. If too light, add in more blocks. If too salty, add in more water. Okay, I know what you're thinking, this looks disgusting, but trust me, it tastes so good and it smells great too, so don't judge a book by its cover. By then, your rice should already be finished as well. There are two ways you can have curry. Either you have the rice and the sauce separate from each other and dip the rice in like you would french fries into barbecue sauce, or just mix it all together like fried rice. I prefer the latter, but if you want a bit more presentability, then do the former. And that's about it. It takes roughly an hour to make curry, but a lot of Korean and Japanese dishes take time. It's well worth it though, and curry keeps a long time too, so you can store it in the fridge for like a week or two depending on how soon after you take it from the pot and into the fridge. But it always tastes best straight from the pot. Thanks again so much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed my first video, and sorry for the rather sloppy recording. I'll get better at it the more cooking videos I make. I had a lot of fun making this video actually. By the way, if any of you guys try making this yourself, send me a picture on Twitter and I'll include it in my next cooking video, so let's hit 4K subscribers quickly. I'll see you guys again soon. Take care.